Hello and welcome to video 11.1. This is Tuesday, April 14, and we're going to be exploring some important themes this evening related to documentary filmmaking and the September 11 experience. I'm going to assume that as you're viewing this film, you've had a chance to take a look at the readings for this evening, which are great and informative readings on themes covering both heroism and our definitions and understandings of heroism, and the presentation of real-world experiences on film and documentary filmmaking. This, the video lecture material, plus the readings are all set up in helpful framing for our viewing of the documentary 9/11 later this evening. I'm going to share screens right now, and we'll talk through some important class business and then get started. The simplest of first PowerPoint slides to tell you about the themes that we're going to try to cover in the period available to us this evening. We are going to talk about documentary filmmaking and the September 11 experience in some detail to provide foundation for the film viewing. The second slide is a reminder of class business, and that is that we are making steady progress through this spring semester in this alternative format, of course, including the fact that this evening, Tuesday, April 14, I've sent to you by email as an attachment a new assignment, the critical essay on heroism in film. This is a great opportunity for you to develop an essay that focuses on themes of courage, bravery, and heroism, and analyzes these themes from our readings, like the Allison and Goodall's piece, in a variety of film contexts. Specifically, you have a chance individually to select a film of interest to you and connect theory and framing to the film and film interpretation. This can be almost any film you might imagine, and you could develop a creative approach to this assignment if you choose. There are a couple of caveats, though. I want you to have fun with this assignment and imagine neat connections that you can make between the theory and filmic material. But let's be sure to choose a film for your viewing that is not one that overlaps with the viewing in its entirety for our class, so not double covering in that sense. We're talking about a film that is different, that you're choosing creatively, that you think could be applied to this assignment. I welcome further discussion of this. As always, I have office hours available or can answer any questions or concerns that arise by email. The only other item of class business is to acknowledge that many of you completed the response paper focused on war photography, and I'm in the process of grading that and will return that to you all individually. I'm so happy tonight to talk with you about documentary films and film theory. This is a genre of film that I absolutely love, that I enjoy viewing so many different kinds of films that capture real-world experiences in very interesting ways. So I'll start out by saying that I absolutely love documentary films. They are my favorite genre and an important area of filmmaking that I'm glad that we can explore a little bit together. There are so many films that fit this category that you might know about and you might be interested in. You might already, for example, have a documentary film favorite or two. Let me just mention up front that I have all kinds of favorites. There's hardly a documentary film that I've watched that I haven't enjoyed. And there are so many powerful filmic expressions of important themes. Here are some examples of some documentary films that have caught a great deal of international and national acclaim, some more recent than others. Now, one of my favorites is the 1995 documentary Hoop Dreams, which in my mind is just one of the most powerful films I've ever seen. But there are so many other great ones on this list. And these are just a couple of samples. And I also brought in some contemporary references as well. As I think about documentary film and film viewing, I know that we are film buffs in this class, and I know that you're probably interested in a lot of documentaries as well. So I actually went and took the next step, and I have a series of suggestions for you about what to do in the current quarantine. Ideas for great documentaries for the quarantine that you and your family might appreciate viewing if you have a chance and if you have some extra time. These are terrific recent documentaries that I've seen that I think capture the spirit of all that documentaries can offer. The American Factory film put together by the Obama family production company. The Edge of Democracy is a really gripping film about Brazilian politics. And then The Great Hack, with interesting questions about whether the new world of social media and cyber can influence democracy in powerful ways. These are all great documentary films. I think they're all available on Netflix. I've watched them on some streaming platform here in the last few weeks and months. But I also have one more documentary to recommend to you, and this one is just, of course, for fun. This is a documentary series that is available on Netflix right now. I'll bet some of you have already seen it. And that, of course, is the Tiger King series. Joe Exotic, his life and exploits, is a really interesting way to understand how different people live different circumstances and lives. So great documentaries for the quarantine if you have time to enjoy them. Let's talk a little more about documentary filmmaking. Documentary films themselves represent such an important category of filmmaking. And I'm informed in my discussion and description of these perspectives by ideas raised in Dave Saunders' chapter, for example, our reading for today. And by the way, Dave Saunders' chapter comes from a terrific book on documentary film, aptly titled Documentary, that provides important framing and foundation for our understanding. In thinking about what a documentary is, Saunders acknowledges this can be a complex definition or frame, but I will give you one of his definitions of documentary filmmaking. Saunders says that documentaries are a type of film based on the real world and real people, depicting things as they are or telling about historical events in a supposedly truthful or objective manner. And we'll underline supposedly because we're going to talk for a minute or two about these questions of truth and advertising in documentary films and filmmaking. Documentary film theory then defines what documentaries are and then begins to try to categorize and understand them, where we see them, and how do we know them when we see them. In thinking about a documentary and what constitutes a documentary, and you'll remember this from the Saunders chapter, this is an interesting and complex area. But Saunders offers up some fairly straightforward arguments about what we think we can rule in terms of documentary filmmaking. What is a documentary? Well, it's a nonfiction film. We're talking about films that set out, anyway, to try to portray facts or real world events. Documentaries focus on real world phenomena, often interesting curiosities, questions, or puzzles. Political stories or events, for example, would fall into that. The goal of many documentarians is to express basic truths, basic ideas about what real world dynamics are at play, to document the event or the experience, to capture something, in some cases in real time as well, a story unfolding in a powerful way. This is the effort to tell dramatic stories. And so many documentaries are constructed in a way that you see an arc of a dramatic story, often building on real world events. And of course, the goal for documentary filmmakers is to present these themes, events, or circumstances in gripping and interesting ways. And there, the documentary filmmakers have a lot of influence in trying to find the balance between, actual historical record and artistic presentation of that record and information. Then documentary films can be understood as films that capture these basic characteristics, but there's so much more, especially in that last point about balancing historical record and art. Documentaries are so interesting and so engaging. They often teach or educate, and that's one of the things, of course, I love about documentaries. But at the same time, so many documentaries are constructed in a way that they try to appeal to the heart. They try to capture important themes and draw you in as viewers. Documentary film theorist Michael Renoff is an expert that's referenced in Saunders and in other writings about documentary film theory, describes documentaries as having 4 primary purposes. Documentaries, Renoff says, can record important events or circumstances, can, through artistic presentation, be designed to persuade and engage the audience in thinking critically and creatively about what documentaries are and the themes in them. To analyze and interrogate, right? So many documentaries push you into the story, into the process, and have us thinking about analyzing, interrogating, asking good questions about circumstances or events. And ultimately, back to this idea of an artistic balance, to express powerful and important emotions, to express and tell powerful stories and engage the audience. Documentaries then are educational. They help teach and importantly inform the audience, but they also very much appeal to the heart. These are important questions that are raised, but Saunders also pushes it a little farther. And he says, what we also need to think about in that balance between real events and art are how documentaries are constructed and whether or not they always absolutely capture the truth. Saunders provides some interesting examples, including his description of the efforts by filmmakers to develop Nanook of the North, one of the first classic documentary films that in fact includes some staged events and circumstances in that film, that classic documentary. Other producers and developers of documentary film have been accused in some cases of leaning too much on artistic presentation versus truth in record and advertising. And there are so many interesting examples of this, including controversial examples that capture events, say, on the political left for some documentarians, or on the political right for others. So an open question about where do we find the absolute or best balance between real-world events and artistic presentation. These themes, then, are some of the themes raised by the Dave Saunders chapter and raised in broader documentary film theory that I wanted to share with you as helpful foundation for our exploration this evening. This is the end of video 11.1, and I'll join you again in video 11.2 in just a moment. Thanks.